call this Urban Renewal Board meeting to order. Jeff, will you please call the roll?
Yes, so we'll start with Board Member Baden, present. Board Member Smallwood.
Here.
Board Member Sheldon.
Here.
Board Member Walker.
Here.
Board Member Adjourn.
Here.
Board Member Hookinson.
Here.
Board Member Schneider.
Here.
Board Member Jones.
Here.
And Board Chair Pulliam.
Here. Thank you for that. Well, welcome everybody. I know we're all excited to kind of see the report tonight on a very exciting project here in our community. Would you like to kick us off, Jordan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I have Margaret and Martin here from Sarah Architects, and this was a project that we had engaged 3J with, and 3J has done some projects similar to this concept planning with other communities. 3J, of course, is our consultant that's working with us on the comprehensive plan. And to give some background, this area of town, obviously, we all know it's Skipper Lundeen property. It's the commercial properties that the Bell 362nd extension project is currently being constructed right now. We've been talking about doing some proactive planning for that area for a while, kind of informally, with the intent to kind of get ahead of development that might occur there once we start construction. It is the kind of the last big parcels of commercial property within Sandy. There's been a lot of talk over the years of different visions for what that can be for the city of Sandy, whether that's more retail opportunities, some mixed use development, big box retail, a place for jobs and high wage jobs for our community. And so this really started to accelerate this year as we started construction on 362nd and Bell Street. We started our comprehensive plan update. We have the economic development strategy. We have the housing needs analysis. And we have the economic opportunities analysis all going on at the same time as we're heading towards constructing the street project that's going to be completed this spring and summertime. And so that kind of left us in this moment of we really need to get going on thinking with the board and the city council how they want this area to develop, because there's a couple of different approaches you can do, and really the basics are you can let it happen organically. It's zoned commercial. There's a little bit of R2 there on the northeast part of the property, and development will occur. We know there's interest in this area. We know the road project is going to spur more interest in letting something happen. But the other approach is to have the board and have the council engage with property owners, engage with the community about really thinking what the concepts could be there, and then doing something more formal, like a framework plan that then you could build into your development code and your zoning, come up with other types of incentives to help guide development that's consistent with what your vision would be for that area. And so given kind of the timeline on this and all the things happening, I touched base with Steve, who's the project manager on the comprehensive plan, and said, hey, in urban renewal, we regularly do professional service contracts to do design plans and look at doing some concept planning. This hasn't happened yet. We've been talking about it. Would you be willing to help us out? And so he brought on some urban designers that kind of worked with staff, and you saw the timeline in there over the last few months to bring something to the board to get your input on and your feedback. And really tonight is the start of a process that the board is interested in. This is really to start the board thinking about concept planning, think about framework planning, and thinking about what your vision is for that area, and kind of learn more about the property, what the constraints are, what the opportunities are. There's a lot of good work that they've done and looking at the landform analysis and sort of the conditions out there, and then pitching some ideas just to get you guys to start thinking about, is that what you want? What do you want? And then how do you make that happen? Obviously, we'll get into next steps and if there is interest in doing a bigger planning effort, what that would entail. But that sort of sets the stage. Margaret and Martin have a great presentation that you saw attached there with some graphics and things that they'll be walking through. So I'll hand it off to Margaret. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
So again, I'm Margaret Raymond. I'm a planner with Sarah Design, and I'll walk us through a little bit of Jordan did a great job setting up where we got brought into this process, and I'll just walk you through a couple of our early steps before diving into the preliminary scenarios that we developed Jay and city staff. And so as Jordan mentioned, our objectives here were to look at the landscape, the existing conditions on the site, and then start to identify some potential opportunities and constraints for future development, and then to develop 3 preliminary concepts to start to set the stage for future planning work that may occur in this area. And we looked at focuses on residential, retail, and office uses based on our conversations with staff. So this is our project schedule. We started work in fall of last year. We did a site visit in September of 2022, and then did most of our work into late fall last year, and now we're here with you all to discuss our final deliverables and what we came up with. So I'll walk you through the existing conditions that we found on the site. So as I mentioned, we did a site visit at the beginning of September with staff. We were able to walk a large portion of the site, particularly where the Bell Street connector is going through, and started to get a sense of what was going on in terms of constraints and topography and just the lay of the land. And we have load. There we go. And so this
It's
is
drowned. I was wondering if it was going to be drowned. All right.
This is starting from sort of the vantage point from the high school, from the Mount Hood Athletic Club, and then continuing along the eastern boundary of the site, heading north, and you can see at the end the Bell Street connector going through. So really just showed the site really well from that vantage point. And then from all of that data collection on site, we did some work behind the scenes and gathering map information around zoning context, those constraints that I mentioned, as well as existing roadways, intersections, crosswalks. And we also overlaid that with a 1/4 mile radius, which can help to see connections between the existing residential in that northeast corner of the property, or just outside of the property boundary, and high school, and how that might fit in to this site, because a 1/4 mile tends to be how we describe walkable neighborhoods. So you can see approximately 2 1/4 mile radii fit within that boundary of what we're talking about for the concept plan area. And then just as a reminder, this area is largely R2 and C2. As you can see in the previous map, the majority of the site is zoned C2 currently, with just a small portion of R2. And R2 allows single family detached and attached dwellings, as well as duplexes and multifamily dwellings. And C2 allows multifamily dwellings above a commercial business, which we often refer to as mixed use, retail businesses, other types of office, some light industrial uses, and then other commercial uses that are briefly listed in that bullet.
I apologize. This might be a dumb question. Senior housing, that would be, I think of it as commercial, but is it residential, or how is that usually classified?
I'd have to look in our zoning code, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Look it up.
It's probably listed as a conditional use, is my guess.
Yeah.
But I can confirm.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
So then in addition to the zoning context, as you know, there's a layer of regulatory context that you all have been talking about recently. So there's that draft economic opportunities analysis, which affects industrial and commercial land. And so the draft analysis shows a small deficit of industrial land and a small surplus of commercial land. And then the housing needs analysis, which is in progress, but the results may have implications for what possibilities there are to look at the zoning on this site. So if if there's a deficit of medium density residential land, changes from residential to commercial zoning will be challenging. And I want to note the previous slide deck that we sent out had this flipped. So if you see that in your previous ones, that should make more sense now. And then we'll go over this again when we go through the preliminary concepts. And this may start to make more sense based on what we've sort of sketched out. Doesn't necessarily align to zoning boundaries in all cases. So just hold tight for a second. But then if there's a surplus of medium density residential land, there may be a possibility to change some of the residential to commercial zoning, just depending on the results of those analyses. So just something to keep in mind, and we can go over that again as we talk through our concepts. So I'll pass it over to Martin to talk about opportunities and constraints that we reviewed.
Thanks. Few constraints, few opportunities. Let's start with the constraints because I think they're from they're very visible. Highway 26 as probably a barrier towards the south. There are limitations in zoning and land use regulatory framework that Mark just talked about. There's also surrounding trails and networks and connections that are incomplete. So how can we fix that network? There's an opportunity on the other side of that. And then the topography of the site. It's definitely not a flat site.
It's challenging. Yeah.
It's actually a beautifully sloped site. We can talk a little bit about that as well. That could be a real constraint for development. So on the opportunity side, we want to build those new connections to make trail networks. I think there's an opportunity. We think there's an opportunity to emphasize gateways into Sandy from the south, in particular. Again tonight, it's not the first I'm surprised to see. Oh, we're here already, but you kind of are already past this site. There's, I think, some real opportunities along the highway to announce the arrival of Sandy. Also quite visible right now is the agricultural heritage. There's some lovely structures, probably need a little bit tender love and care, but as designers, we love seeing those remnants, especially when they're in such prolific locations as this. We'll talk about that. Safe intersections and activity notes is something that we want to define for this plan. So look for those in our alternatives. And then we've really focused on those areas with redevelopment potential within the existing stock of buildings. Because of the topography, you get quite a few lovely views. What can we do with that? Can we preserve those? Can we develop those as part of the framework of the land? That would be lovely. There are ecological assets. What kind of constraints I'd like to see with development, place-based development solution.
Totally agree.
So there's some wetlands, there's creeks, there's some tree canopies. Hard to preserve sometimes, but it's good to know where they are. Two more opportunities, the high school, in terms of providing access to and from the high school for this new piece of San Diego. It's a critical way to think about how that all fits together, more than just street extension. Finally, there is, of course, a power line corridor, BPA corridor, sort of diagonally going across the freeway and providing the boundary outside of the study area. It's an opportunity for trails. There are some things you can do that's fun. You're already doing that, so that there's a good message.
Can I add what, I think that one of the constraints might be, and you alluded to it with the slope, the terrain, is that may limit some of the utility hookup ability, with the sewer lines, because that's so much of a gravity thing. And I know that was an issue when we were, like a year or so ago when we were looking at this. So that's something to kind of look into.
Yeah, it might require pump stations to get that stuff over the gravity point, so to speak. Yeah. And Sandy, it all flows downhill too.
Yeah.
That was
It goes both ways.
it's a really good one. We didn't go very deep into the infrastructure part, so we won't touch on that too much in this presentation. Point well taken. So this map is our existing opportunities and constraints map. So the things I just described, I hope you can recognize them on this map. I'm happy to point some of them out, but maybe the clearest one is through the middle, the extension of the Bell Street corridor, the BPA on the top left, And then in green, we have identified some of those opportunities, such as, I'll just describe those. Under A, provide connectivity through that along the grocery store outlet to the intersection, the industrial. Under B, there's an opportunity to connect Olson Street extension to Bell Street in the future across the tree corridor. Under C, there are nice areas of development there on that ridge. We'll talk about that last one a little bit more in the next slide. Under D, there's a barn. There's that one of those agricultural structures that's really prominent. There's another one a little bit further. And E, there's a gateway opportunity, right, where Champion comes into the Highway 26 corridor. And then finally, F is intersections that are safe throughout that corridor. Again. From this map, just illustrate that a little bit more with some photos that we took on our sidewalk back in September. The views of the barns, kind of again looking up, you see the topography there. That barn really sits on a nice ridge. There are two ridges on this land. And that picture 1 and 2 really speaks to that. There's a small swell between those two ridges. Our map following will identify that. Image 3 talks about some of the existing agricultural buildings that are there between tree canopy, groves of trees that are quite distinctive. Would be lovely if you could fit those in future development. And then on the lower right, this is where Bell Street kind of comes in from the east by the highway into this expansion. There's a real sense of a portal, if you want, because of the drainage of the associated topography. You saw that in that drone footage.
How steep is that going to be?
Well, it's on the previous slide. We
How
have,
have they? Yeah, last time I saw it, it was like, holy smokes, it's
not
going to
so
take a
bad.
sled out there.
they've flattened that out quite a bit. But forgot to mention in the previous slide, there are steep areas identified there, yellow and orange. So we did a slope analysis. Really not too bad. There's some steep areas around that little swale just south of Bell Street Extension that really the alignment of that street follows that topography intentionally, I would say. And farther to the west is another little steep area. So this is a map I've been alluded to a couple of times now. This is what we would say is a landform analysis, a simplified reflection of what we see there. Two ridges, we call them flat tops. Both of them have slopes on the north side of them. The ridge to the north, of course, drops into Trickle Creek tributary, which actually goes all the way down into Portland. So this is into Pression boring. So there's an important creek connection, Deep Creek, and it drops into Blackness River by the boring. These are
It's
the
Tickle
headwaters.
Creek, it's Tickle Creek, by the way.
You know, there's confusion about
We
that.
actually found
It's
out
Tickle
there,
Creek.
we actually found out there is another creek in town called Trickle Creek.
Yeah.
We have a tickle and a
But this
tickle.
goes into Tickle
Trickle
Creek.
goes into.
Yeah, we found out there is something on the USGS survey called Trickle Creek, which is, so Martin
That's
is
where we got
correct.
it from,
Yeah.
So
Who's
we'll call it
naming
Fickle
this?
Creek, maybe.
Because Tickle Creek's on the other side. Yeah, right up there. Oh, there it is. Well, cool. I learned something new today.
Yeah, right.
We just found out a few months ago, so.
Sorry to be the wise guy.
No, it makes perfect sense because Tickle Creek's on the opposite side of Highway 26, so they can't both have the same name.
The point is, it's important headwaters to that creek that goes all the way into the Blackness River. Okay, and then that smaller drainage, it doesn't have there's probably a seasonal drainage between those two flat tops. It's one that sort of runs parallel to the river extension. Yeah, here's another way to look at that. We interpreted that landform into this, what we call framework diagram. So without applying land uses to it per se, there's just a whole lot of sense to look at these connections for roads based on that landform. And to look at that central drainage as an asset to the site. So that's what we've been carrying through. Isn't to say that in a later phase, you decide that it's more valuable to turn that into developable land by regrading that site. That's always an opportunity, but for now, we think there's some real value also in how we could separate land uses on the site. So we see that coming back. But we see a future extension of Bell, obviously to 362nd. That's what's being built right now. It can go farther west and connect down to Highway 26, right where Champion comes in. So it could create a full intersection there. And then it could extend north to make the connection with Olson. And then finally, I want to point out actually three more connections that make a heck of a lot of sense, which is industrial coming from the south, turning up to 26 and then crossing it. And at some point in the future, if redevelopment could occur on that strip mall grocery store, that would be a great connection to have back to them. Nothing you need anytime soon, but in the long term, that would be a real great connection. Just as this connection along the eastern boundary of our study area, along the drainage from 26, going along that drainage straight north and connecting to the Bell Street extension.
You want to take interruptions or do you want to wait till the end?
It's a
Yeah,
work session,
please.
so if you want to interrupt.
I'll jump in. The Kathleen, I think we have something too.
Okay, I'll go first, I guess. Have you had a chance to talk to ODOT at all about some of these other gateways you've been talking about, like the one at Industrial Way there? I don't want a lot of detail, but I know there's some issues about that particular intersection. Have you had a chance to talk with ODOT at all, or?
I have the.
Because it's high, so basically it's this high level.
Okay, that's all I'm after. is just kind of-
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah, we have that. Wanted to point out.
Oh, 1 second, sir.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
Oh, I
Kathleen.
was just gonna, it's the Kate Schmidt thing on the east side that you're referring to, that road alignment.
Yeah.
And there's already kind of issues with it's too close to the grocery outlet
The grocery.
intersection. And there's issues there. And then also just the side slope there is terrifically steep and wet, and
Walked it.
And,
You're
yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's a realistic potential future.
So the way we look at that, and I agree with you, by the way, the way we look at this framework is let's try to maximize that connectivity, and we're not saying which one should happen when or which one shouldn't happen at all. But there's probably a way to make this work if there wasn't the proximity of the store that you point out, and if you did some heavy creek, might really push you back away from the creek. And then there's questions about, is it worth it, right? Because you're giving up developable land. It's probably going to be costly. So technically possible. Is it desirable? That's something that still can be evaluated moving forward. But in the interest of maximizing the connectivity of this area, so you can disperse traffic throughout the area and connect it as well as possible to the areas to the north. Point is very well taken.
Thank you.
To that point, maybe an alternative, so I'll get right to this. What's particularly steep is that northern area of the connection you just pointed out, just north of the Athletic Club, going all the way to Bell. So maybe as an alternative, it would be better to not build that and go west. So we actually drew a parallel road system parallel to Bell and parallel to 26 as a local street connection that could be really desirable to unlock those properties directly along the highway, give them another way around, and that would allow to then come back down at that same intersection.
Like alternate.
It's what it does. I should have.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's around the line.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I just, also want to point out the Sandy Dog Park there on the upper right corner, just off our site. And that neighborhood around is something that we are very cognizant of in this framework. We colored sort of a perimeter of green along that drainage way, which could, on one hand, create a really nice buffer to the neighborhood. On the other hand, it could be a really nice connective scene with this new piece of city of sand. So we call that our open space ring, and recommend that these plans take advantage of that connectivity with trails and crossings. Okay, so if this is our framework, and I hope that makes sense, yeah, build our land use concept on this framework. So we're not tweaking this framework too much. There may be an opportunity to do that here or there, but I'm ready to move into the concept plan.
Now, I'll preface these concepts because we did, working with staff here, what we wanted to do is provide something that was very contrasting, maximizing sort of a few different areas, residential, which, we kind of gave you a look at some of the constraints based on our housing needs analysis, economic opportunities analysis. And then one that's like retail focused, and that's more consistent with what the underlying zoning would be, and what you think in terms of your traditional retail development, but enhancing that with some of the urban design principles, using the landform. And then the office concept was more of like, okay, if we're looking at some of the things that we've been talking about with this land being an opportunity for high wage jobs and employment opportunities there, how can we realize a vision like that? Now, this is a starting point. These are, staff working with some urban designers and planners to kind of come up with some concepts to kind of just get the council and the board to start thinking about and give us kind of feedback. And is it worth exploring more? We really think it's better for retail, or we kind of like the office, or we really need to center on a hotel theme. All those ideas is kind of what we're looking for, and just your feedback and starting this conversation and putting your mind sort of in that mode. And while I'm did think, the timing on bringing this to the board, this is an urban renewal funded project. It's in the urban renewal district. So we do have goal setting coming up, and we're kind of getting into this mode and goal setting with urban renewal and stuff. We'll be talking about project priorities and kind of the opportunities as the road project gets completed and this urban renewal land gets opened up for development. So just want to touch on that before Martin jumps into the different concepts.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's really helpful. We've looked at these three alternatives. Each of them on its own would be a great plan. So they start answering some questions, each of them in a different way, but then we realize they start raising questions as well, and that's why you are here, obviously. We want to create that contrast so you can make some well-informed decisions. The guiding principles there on the left, I'll just touch on. We wanted to provide services that cater to both residents and visitors through Sandy. There might be really a nice opportunity to create something here for visitors and residents alike that maybe has the character of a village center and captures some of that mountain related traffic, but not too exclusive uses for those tourists, if you want, visitors. They're really tied in together with daily uses for a neighborhood, for instance. Then we want to promote opportunities for placemaking. What does that mean? Give it a sense of character. So it's not just any place, but really it's a recognizable place within the Sandy characteristics. A new center, if you want, within center, and if within Sandy. And if it's not a center, at least it's a place that takes advantage of the qualities of the landform, for instance. And then all of these concept alternatives incorporate residential uses and in varying degrees. So you can see that. Take a look at our first concept. They're in random order, but this concept is the residential focused concept. It deviates from the existing zoning in that it extends the residential area along the northern boundary of the site. So basically, opposite the existing residential neighborhood to the north, the other side of the creek, what we call the green perimeter there would be a new neighborhood connected to that same wonderful dog park. And from that area, there would be an opportunity to create a diagonal through the site that hooks up with the intersection of 362nd and Highway 6, where we envision a village center, a mixed use. And so that's that area where visitors and neighbors could mingle and connect and create a new place. Along the highway, we're maintaining the existing commercial uses and propose a slightly higher density residential close to the highway than currently exists. And that's a finer grain, a detail that would have to be taken up in the zone. And that could specifically be expressed in that village center. See that drainage way, retained, next trail in there becomes a central green feature as well between these two. Questions about this particular concept?
How much space is that for residential proposed in there?
So calculator, I don't have the number readily available. Do you remember?
The total, all of the developable area is 109 acres, so that's roughly a little over 50%.
Yeah.
Just
50,
over
right.
the area.
Yeah.
So,
We will provide that number later.
yeah,
Now, half that upper load is already residential.
Yeah.
And then, and my question had to do with what is the difference between the village commercial and the commercial? Because when I look at the things that are allowed, I mean, we've already kind of failed on our experiment with village commercial and even let areas develop not as village commercial. So I'm confused about what the intent of the red
Yeah.
versus the orange is.
May have been better if I hadn't called it village center then.
Well, I just, you know,
Yeah.
it has a certain connotation, but yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, I think the idea is that that's the most walkable piece of the entire district. Walkable, maybe most dense as well, and the most mixed. So I think you would really look at retail functions and some housing, potentially maybe some lodging. Again, it's located around the existing barn, so maybe as a placemaking component. That's the area where you're going to be most intentional about design standards. Whether what that means to you, I think you can color it later, but we identified this as the most recognizable, most central place along 26 that creates really good relationships with the district beyond.
So that would create the new face of Sandy.
Carl.
Yeah, just thinking about it, we have had some real struggles with our village concept in the city. I don't think but one of our several have done very well, but this is the first time we've done such a significant development and have such a large number of acres of commercial and residential. It might work here, but I think that'd be one of those things that certainly want to think about. The other thing that goes with Councilor Maitland's is, I don't know if sound like you haven't quite got there yet, but I'd be interested to know, do we have excess residential with this particular plan than we would for the balance that we have in our city for our plans? It looks like we do. And does it take away from some of the C2 land? And is that, we have a surplus, I take it, so we may be able to assimilate that, but I'd be interested to know the pluses and minuses on our zones when you get there. Assume you haven't got that yet.
Those will be future work sessions, because we are working on the economic opportunities analysis, which is, we have preliminary numbers where we do have a surplus of commercial, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, and a slight deficit in industrial. Housing needs, I think, is still being worked on.
Yeah, we're still working on the map.
So we don't have all the numbers on that yet, but we knew that this concept really was kind of probably the harder lift of having to do rezoning and stuff, and probably not as consistent with what, we've informally been talking about as just being a commercial opportunity for jobs and retail, things like that.
Yeah, it's just an obvious, I think everybody recognizes that it's got a lot more residential here than the others, so.
And I'll add to answer the mayor's question from earlier. Assisted living is an allowed use in the C2 zone and a conditional use in the R2.
Okay, thank you.
Is that
consider that something housing, what's it called?
Oh, congregate,
Congregate housing, is that,
that's a little bit different, but it can be somewhat similar.
okay.
Okay, to move on to the next concept. This is our retail focused concept. That means it conforms to the existing zoning designations and includes more retail commercial uses throughout the planned area. Again, I'll use that same term, village center, forgive me, but the same intent happening in that red area, serving both residents and business alike. Perhaps this has a park and ride, or hotel. Maybe this is the arrival before one gets to outside of or another place to congregate and disperse people. So the commercial area is in orange, the village center mixed use is in red, and then we're showing an orange mixed use residential, so there could still be some retail opportunities in that as well. So we're sticking with the light yellow, the lower residential uses.
Yeah, Lauren, please.
What type of things do you typically see in a village center mixed use?
Started mentioning some of them. Let's say this could be where there's a half-acre plaza with a splash pad with a coffee shop next door, and maybe the parcel over has a hotel that can take advantage. Park and ride get activated, so if there's a bus stop, so there's a place you can get to that use. Also, when people come back, they have a bite to eat, drink something, but they have an open space to make.
Chris.
Just for clarity, when you say existing zoning designations, all the mixed use residential is C2. Zone, right?
Correct. So one of the uses allowed is multifamily with a commercial component, right? So that would be how you would conform to.
I think, yeah. I mean, it was always more envisioned as more commercial with a residential component.
Sure. Again, something you could further refine.
At this level of high, and I'm figuring that this is all high level planning. I'm assuming it, or is that a wrong assumption that the transportation strategy is about the same for all three? So that the gateways, tertiary roads, access, all that's about the same. And I know there's going to be some thoughts about getting to the dog park and stuff if it's more commercial or less commercial versus more residential, I suppose. So,
yeah,
some changes, but
we did an earlier version of this plan with a little bit more detail, just testing that out, illustrative. I think we may have it somewhere. There's still great opportunity to connect, for instance, Sandy Dog Park to that village center, even if it's a commercial center.
So it's not just a dog park, it's a dog park and it's a community neighborhood park. But anyway, I was involved in the trails and stuff, and the way we plan those connector trails that are so badly needed is, you know, we have it going down the power line there north of Trickle Creek, and then but we have the trail connector from the park going over to an intersection with the power line trail, and then we chose to bring it down the sidewalk to get down to, because we knew we were going to be going through commercial and things like that. So that's kind of why there's not a angle through the middle of it all. I mean, conceivably, I think you have the potential for a trail there along the creek way there if you want to kind of dissect it there, because that's already open space and all, rather than having a sidewalk. You're probably going to end up with sidewalks where you have the roads anyways. So that was kind of all the rationale behind the trail locations. But I do want to ask, so the way I see it is that this area is like our kind of last hope for commercial in Sandy. we've got other areas, with the village commercial and all that. But the reality is that commercial isn't going to really develop out there on Highway 211 or Bluff and Kelso. And it's not evidently going to develop out on DeBarco in 26 because we've zoned it, I don't know, it may go, but so this is kind of our hope. And it's, relatively flat ground compared to some of the other parts of town. And so when you look at the south half of the picture from their screen, you kind of see all that's our commercial, that's Freddy's, that's the movie theater, that's all the other stuff on the other south half. And so my concern is that when I'm looking at the big picture of future commercial property development in Sandy, this is kind of, maybe if you go further west, there's some potential. Don't think there's too much potential going east. And so my concern is, why would we develop a bunch of this as residential when we can put residential pretty much anywhere else? And this is kind of our only best spot at this point in the next 10 years to put, try to get as much, commercial development, retail, and I want it to be nice, but I'm thinking of like, Sunnyside Road, in Happy Valley, you got all those kind of mini mall things, and there's some residential kind of behind it and a little bit along it, but mostly kind of behind it and stuff. But that's kind of, and I'm not saying that that's what I love, or a Costco or a Home Depot or whatever. We're not going to have like apartments over a Home Depot. And that C3, the C3 does
I would
have.
do it. Well, I like the little, I'd walk around there and eat all the
Right.
samples.
That's Costco.
Oh, yeah,
That's
yeah,
Home
yeah,
Depot.
Costco.
But my point is that the C3 says, commercial with multi-use above it is what the code says. And so that's where, when we have these kind of big broad things, I'm just kind of concerned that we not develop, change all this to residential, because that's what I've seen happen on some of our other commercial properties along the highway. And
There's not a lot I can disagree with there. I agree with
But
a
there's
lot of
three
it.
options, right?
Yeah, there's
Just
three
a
options.
nice
We're just
segue.
going
but this is
through.
the retail one.
Yeah,
But you did a segue
concept, just concept.
Yeah, but
In my mind, this would be one of the different ways we could look at this, but I would also say we aren't downtown Portland or even in Happy Valley. And sometimes the things that we look at in Sandy could make this one a pretty nice combination. I think it has some possibilities for it. I think all three of them have some advantages to them. I think that there might be, I don't see many other alternatives at the moment that wouldn't make me say, oh, we really missed something, but
let's get to one more.
let's
Yeah.
get to finish
One
it.
more, and then we can.
And this is the type of feedback that we're looking
Yes,
for. I mean, because keeping this high level and kind of the blob diagrams or whatever we were calling these, you can color them different, right? You can change it to a different color orange and it's commercial, you know.
You just make the argument for that. Let's do that. Sure.
Yeah.
Incidentally, I read last week that Costco is studying a mixed use plan somewhere in America, so.
I could do the samples.
Yes.
Hot dogs. I mean.
That's my retirement
I
plan
mean,
right
Oh, my goodness. TV doesn't work. I go downstairs, get a new one. I mean, unbelievable. Yeah.
You also get to listen to the backup horn of the.
Oh, the T.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
So this is our final and third alternative at the border, but this would be, let's focus office and maybe research and development campus district on this site. The site is beautiful for it. If you could attract an R&D operator, I think would be quite pleased to photograph. I can't say that word. In terms of the beauty of the site and the relation to the topography. Leave myself there. We, typically those sites have an organization that is sometimes almost like a campus. That's why we use that, like a educational campus. So we see opportunities for that connection to the Sandy Park. There's also a dog park in the upper right. We have a slightly larger center around that 362nd intersection, the 26th. Something that both supports that R&D use. So office workers have a place to go, but again, this could also be the connection for residents to enjoy the campus grounds and come across the ridge to that center on 6th. So just reading out loud what's in the bubble. This concept is an office-focused concept. It expands the C2 zoning into existing R2 zoning district with campus-style office development geared toward research and development. The expanded village center, so we're making it larger here, is adjacent to the existing commercial business. Accommodate again services for visitors and residents and office workers.
But the rezone would be tough, right? Because the rezone could be tough, right? Because you're taking residential.
We have to have a surplus.
What's that?
We'd have to have a surplus coming out of this analysis. Is that what I heard?
Well, but also you have to be careful of the takings too, correct?
Both of those things are true.
Yeah.
That's why you're waiting for the results of those studies to see where you're at. And what that would be.
Can I-
Litigation.
This idea of an office focused concept, is this like an airport way type of development with, or something higher, more like Gresham? What is it, Gresham Station? What, give me an example
Yeah.
that I can relate to.
Airport. Just call it airport way. Yeah, airport way. You could also think of a Nike campus or Intel campus.
Yeah, I'm gonna call Mayor Callaway right when we're out of here out in Hillsborough. Sorry about Intel, we're taking it.
Yeah, but
Actually, I
that
thought
style
they
of
scrapped that.
development.
They
there.
did, yeah.
When I looked at this one, I wondered if there wasn't some way to throw in some residential in the mix of this one. It looks like a lot of office near Nike kind of a concept, that there might be a place for people to actually live nearby their offices and also the commercial portions of it. Did you look at that kind of mix when you're putting this together, or are you thinking make this as divergent to the
So you wanted to contrast it. That's the beauty of these discussions. Mix and match of these concepts. That's how you can look at this as well. So again, just to summarize what we just saw, don't forget the framework diagram that's underlying all of these. Then it becomes a color by numbers almost, right? What colors do you want where? Feel strongly about the framework that we came up with. It seems to make a lot of sense, and it works really well with these 3 ways to explore different methods. But there are obviously other purposes.
So did you explore, because obviously we have a deficit of industrial land, and not that that always works, industrial right up with retail commercial, but I mean, was there much thought at looking at the topography and stuff, if industrial would work anywhere on the property?
I'm gonna pass that one on to Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, the deficit is 9 or 10 acres. And I think that's probably going to be what we're going to be talking about with the EOA and the comp plan is opportunities for that as we expand. I think something in the EOA that has come under discussion a lot is building off of sort of the surrounding areas with like, ever fresh fruit and that sort of industry and stuff as you start to head up towards Kelso, maybe there's opportunity to expand industrial up that way. And then you have the I-3 land that's across the highway with Sabella Farms and things like that too. But also, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but C2 and I2 are very similar too. So that office park can also be sort of the campus that can be doing like manufacturing type of stuff too, right? But I'm getting, we have 10 minutes here and we do have some next steps. And I'm kind of getting the sense, based on the questions and stuff about, the residential was way over here. Now we want to maximize commercial. And that's the vision. The office concept was sort of this like, fun thing that we want to consider, right? As we try to recruit maybe some of these bigger firms to create high paying jobs in Sandy.
Well, that's my favorite. I'll just be honest. I just don't know how possible it is.
You're right.
Well, I
Whereas
can
I think the
understand the
retail-
research and development, when I hear office, I think office parks are, kind of
They're dying out.
dying out. And so help me understand it's something else. And if it's research and development, which sounds more like industrial or something
To
like
me,
that.
it's like, now this will never happen, okay? But like Satellite Communities College or something there could be pretty darn
Or
cool.
A new hospital, since apparently our old one.
There you go, too, sure. But Yeah. But no, but if we're dreaming, right, like there's things.
Yeah.
Oh, please, yeah.
I just have a question, that back on the last slide, we got the three diagrams up. You used, for office space, you annexed across the street into that little quadrant. And on the other two, you did not. And I was wondering why not.
Yeah, question.
I think it's a graphic. To be honest. So I think
Is that quadrant not buildable?
it is challenging. It is, you can see the existing conditions. It is steep and wet. It's buildable. So it probably won't be green.
Nothing.
We might end up with some stormwater detention there.
I think that is where the stormwater extension is with the project, but that could be capped or moved with development. So enough investment, they would probably want to move it because I think it is flat there, but that's the topography led all the water there. So that's also,
I just saw it color coded on the map, but the other ones weren't.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good catch. It's also the BPA corridor.
Yeah, really close to the lines.
Yeah.
If it's really desired, they'll put it underground, underneath like a parking lot or something.
I guess part of what I'd want to see though is like the office campus with the reality that it'd be really hard to do anything to the R2 section. I feel like that's a reality. That's a movable object, but
You know, with the situation, the way things are with housing right now, it's really uncomfortable for me to think of us dropping all the residential out of something like this. So
I don't think it's possible.
I don't think it's possible without coming up with other
well, that's
ways.
what number 3. does
Oh,
to
well,
us.
that's
Again,
the
it's just
point.
the concept. Yeah.
The H&A will
That
inform that
response.
in the near future, but I would agree with you, Mayor.
Yeah.
That's gonna be tough.
And with that campus, I mean, the orange still allows residential, right? An office campus option
C2, yeah.
that still has,
Mixed.
so it doesn't totally eliminate,
Sure.
but yeah, you definitely.
And we had, my apologies, a little bit of a sidebar, but to Rich's point, nothing in the zoning other than that little sliver of the R2, nothing in the commercial zoning stops us from recruiting some sort of office campus focus at all qualifies, correct? Yep. What else do you need from us, George?
Yeah, well, so next step, so yeah, this, well, thank you for holding the work session. And this is helpful. And hopefully, I think if anything, we can come away from this is that continued conversations about this as we get into goal setting and the budget. Like I said, this was an urban renewal project because this is our last big urban renewal piece and the C2 land and urban renewal. But if we now kind of pivot to, what would be next steps on this? What traditionally you would see is taking this now to engaging with property owners, stakeholders, the neighborhood, and doing a more, robust planning process to refine a concept that is in line with your vision. And that ultimately will lead to potentially actually doing things like code changes where you can have like an actual overlay for, let's call it West Sandy or call it the old barn district or something that can get named in the process where then you can start putting these things into play. That basically can help guide development. Like Kelly said, zone changes would be tough, but what a framework plan would look like is things like how would you get infrastructure there? What would it cost? Are there incentives that the board would like to consider additional urban renewal projects where we would be willing to partner on like a plaza, bring in transit-oriented development. I know there's a project about to be kicked off with looking for sites for transit up to the mountain. So that's what we really want to do is start generating an appetite to see if there is an appetite for continuing any planning work on as we proceed in the next couple of years. And again, we kind of felt the pressure. The road project is here. It's happening.
You can feel it.
Yeah. And,
Inquiries
we
start
can-
coming in.
yeah. And, again, it's fine. We know, it's beautifully set up for some great retail, some R2 land there, connectivity to the Bell Street, and then the school district, the high school and neighborhood and everything. But this is our opportunity to help guide that development. And it will take some work. Don't get me wrong. It'll take some funds and it'll take some work from Kelly and his team too. But this would ultimately lead to a bigger project. Yeah. I would welcome your feedback on
Please.
A quick question. How's this tie into the comp plan and everything else we're doing? It feels like, what's first?
Yeah, I mean, the HNA, the EOA, and the economic development strategy are all important pieces for this, because that's helping tell us, again, what's our deficits, what's our, our housing needs. But, what's the goals and policies in our economic development strategy in terms of what kind of businesses do we want to recruit? And how do we attract high-paying, jobs into the community? So those actions and those strategies can help us then kind of maybe hone in on what incentives packages we want to look at, what impacts those might be.
Does this plan drive the comp plan, or does the comp plan inform this plan, or are they completely independent?
I would say, I think, yeah, if we continue to work on this plan over the next 6 months, then it will inform the comp plan. If we were to just shelve it for now, I think it would be difficult.
Yeah.
But if we continue to work on it, I think it will inform.
Well, I know we have more conversations about this. We're going to be having in our goal setting and in our budgeting process. Going back up to that, that high level, I want to see us move forward with planning and with engagement. I think there's two ways we can handle our growth. One would be to build a road and then sit on our hands and just see what happens. And at that point, growth gets really thrusted upon and dictated to us, rather than us getting proactive and really dreaming and envisioning what we want for the future of our community, and then going out and proactively making that happen. And I'm always with the latter on it. And so I know obviously we have budget constraints, and again, we have this is a great timing for all those, meetings we're going to be having. But just at a high level, that's kind of what it's in my head,
There's some unique opportunities for some partnerships down the road too. We don't know.
Well, you never know until you go through something like this, either, right?
Well, I think the additional information I'd like to be brought forward is to have, we can all kind of talk about what we'd like to see from a livability and aesthetic, and that would look really cool, whatever, walk into the office or whatever. But my question also has to do with, especially if we're considering urban renewal dollars, so we've already thrown $11 million at this parcel. So that's a lot. I think it's a different pot of money. I get that. But one of the things I'd like to kind of additional information is to understand what different kind of developments bring in what kind of taxes to the city.
Yeah.
So, from a Costco to a research and development park to a community college to a whatever.
Yeah,
I mean,
good point. My community college just wiped out the taxes.
Well,
that's a great point. Yeah.
I just want to kind of know, financially, because like I said,
And when, since it's part of the urban renewal district. So when would we actually see money?
Yeah, so those are great questions. Yeah. All right, well, hey, I can't speak for all of us, but I really enjoyed this.
Yeah,
so,
thanks you guys.
Yeah, thank you for the
Yeah.
work that went into it. Yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate it. Well, guys, we can't leave yet because I skipped over approving our minutes.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, you missed it? Okay, I think
Is this,
not.
are we in a work session or a formal meeting?
No, this is for this.
Urban renewal.
No, we're in an urban renewal board meeting
Okay,
right now.
because it got referenced as a work session at one point. I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
which
you're
one.
right. No, that's good
Right.
catch there. Good catch, Don. But with that, let's go ahead and let's approve the meeting minutes from our urban renewal board meeting on June 21st.
I make a motion that we approve the
You want
Sandy
to
Urban Renewal Board meeting minutes from June 21st, 2022.
There's a motion to adopt. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion to adopt in a second. Chair Mayton's gonna have to abstain as he was not here for that meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nays. Motion carries. With that said, I will close our urban renewal board meeting.